After a long time, I'm back in front of the camera and recording another video for YouTube. This video is the result of a question that I got from one of my Udemy students from far, far away, as far as I can remember, from Peru. This question is about how we can use Microsoft Flow, or as they call it these days, Microsoft Power Automate, to insert values inside a SharePoint list. Easy, right? But no, the question is not that straightforward. The question is that that list that we want to insert the values inside it has one or more lookup fields, which means these are the fields that you have to select the values from a drop-down that those values are in a different list. So let's see how we can do it. I think it's very easy, but I try to make it more interesting. Enjoy. So this is our setup. I have a list in SharePoint called PRD1, and it has two records in it. One of them is floppy disk. It's electronics. Well, I guess it should be something like collectibles or antiques, but we don't have that category regardless. This list has a field called category. Category is actually a lookup list, so the values in this field should be picked up from another list called categories. Let me show you the list. So this is my PRD01, and the category is a lookup field. There is also another field called unit price that I just added to be here. So if I go to categories, you will see these are the items that I have here. And if I go back to PRD01 and I want to add a new item, and I call it demo item, I can pick up the category from the other list, for example, miscellaneous, and the unit price is going to be 12, for example. And if I click on save, I will have it here as a new item. So you see this is a lookup field. Now the question is that, can we insert another record here under PRD01 and populate the category with the value from the other table? Let's see how Flow or Microsoft Power Automate can do that. I go back to my Power Automate portal and I create an instant flow. I think it should be very easy. I call it lookup insert demo. And I select manually trigger a flow. I click on create. Bingo. New step, and I just want to go for SharePoint. Select, create item. I select the create item, and this is asking me for the website. I just need to pick the website from the list, or if you don't have it in the list, just select the enter custom value and copy and paste the URL from the other website. Let me just copy and paste it from here so you see how it works. And that's it. So now if I go to the list name, I can click on this drop down and it will pick up PRD01. As soon as I select it, it shows me the available fields that I should provide the value with. And I call it demo from Power Automate. Okay. On the drop-down, I need to select, for example, seasonal, and the unit price is going to be $100. Good. And I click save. And let's test it. I perform the trigger action, save and test. Should check the connectivity. And there we go. We have the green light that our connectivity is good. I click on continue. And hopefully, if everything works, this title should appear in SharePoint List. So let me click on Run Flow. And let's see if we got it. Yep. Demo from Power Automate, seasonal, $100. Ta-da! Done. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Probably you're thinking, Ali, are you kidding me? Is this how low you are? you really waste our time for video like this. But hold on. Before you move on and unsubscribe my channel, let me tell you the second part. Let me make it a little bit more interesting. Instead of just picking up the values and hard coding it into the flow or Power Automate, this time let's put the values inside the trigger. So basically, let's have a trigger that accepts the product name, category, and unit price, and see how we can handle this part now. I promise it's going to be more interesting. This is the proper scenario. So instead of just a trigger that has a button on it, I want to use a dialog box that the user enters the product name, category, and unit price. And I make all of them mandatory. Now, when it comes inside the Power Automate workflow, it should check. If it can find the category, it should assign the category. If not, it should assign the miscellaneous to the category. Before I really dig into that, I want to show you something. Let me go back to the flow itself. Oh, gotta go to Edit View. Instead of entering the category ID selected from the list, let me enter something else. Let me, instead of seasonal, I enter, for example, 1. And I say use 1 as custom value. So now, instead of category, I have 1. But what does this mean? If I go back to SharePoint, in this view, I actually added the ID field. So the number 1 that I have, which is actually category ID that it says, I can use the ID directly from here. So basically, if the miscellaneous has the ID of 5, if I come back here to the flow, and instead of 1, I put 5, I'm good. Now I call it, God's sake, I call it demo 1. I'm just typing it without seeing, hopefully. Yep. And the unit price is going to be 200 this time. And I click on Save. This time, if I run it, I expect it to enter this value or this product in the PRD01, but the category should be miscellaneous. Let's save it and test it, making sure the theory is working. Save and test. Run flow. Done. And let's get back here and see if we got it. PRD01. And we have it. So basically, if we don't have the value itself, all we need is just the ID. So now we see how this one works. If you have a trigger that accepts all these values, I can have the category, and I can pass the category to a query, and I can look it up from the categories list and get the ID and use the ID to insert the value in the PRD01. Now, if I don't find it, I should pass the value 5, which is going to be miscellaneous. Perfect. So let's start by creating this trigger. Trigger is already there. So all we need to do is just go into the flow. I click on Edit, and I change the trigger, add the fields. Text is going to be product name. I add another field called category. And I add another field. This time it's going to be a number, and I call it unit price. I really don't need to create item at this moment. Let me just get rid of it, because we still have some work to do before we get there. Now, after I get these values, I need to add a new step that performs a lookup to SharePoint. So I go to SharePoint, and under SharePoint, I look for get items. And when I use the get items, again, it uses the same connectivity. I use the flow course, list name. This time I want to query categories. So I want to get the category name here, query it here based on the category that I received from here, and then see if I can find that category. So if I click on Show Advanced Options, I have the filter query and ODATA filter query to restrict entries. If I put the mouse cursor here, it covers everything, so I don't see anything. So let me just open Notepad. And inside Notepad, I want to write my ODATA query. So I say title equals single quote, and inside the single quote, I want to put the value that I get from the input. So let me just copy this here and paste it under filter query. I don't see, but I trust it's going to paste it. And now if I go under manually trigger flow, I can click on category. And after that, I can put this guy here and put a single quote here. Let me tab away and see what I got. So title equals single quote, category, single quote. Of course, if you just have a bigger screen, it doesn't cover it. Microsoft, please do something about this UI. We are not happy with this. At least give us a way that we can shut down this IntelliSense. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the ODATA queries, I have another video on YouTube about using the ODATA. I will put the link probably somewhere here. I also put the link in the video description, so you can look it up and you can follow and learn about ODATA. It's very powerful and it saves you lots of hassle and also money when it comes to the query count and using the connections. Regardless, let's not get sidetracked. I have a query which is called title equals category, and this category is coming from here. I really don't need top count and all those things. We know it either returns nothing or it returns one single value. If I go back here, you see under categories, they're all unique values. Perfect. So I'm good with this part. I just save it and let's test it and see if it works as we expect. Test. And product name, I call it test, whatever, if you're not processing it. Here we are using books. And the unit price, whatever we put here, again, it doesn't matter. The only thing is that I want to make sure books exists here. So if I go here and I click on Run Flow, done. And if I see the get items, let's see if we got it. Perfect. So the ID is 2 and the title is books. Perfect. That's all we needed. And let's test it with some other dummy value that does not exist. Okay. So product name, whatever, category, just some dummy value that does not exist. And I put a dummy unit price, run flow, done. And this time, if I go to get items, there is nothing here. So the value that it returns has a count. It's an array. It's a JSON array. Again, if you're good with JSON, fantastic. If you're not good with JSON, I have a JSON course on Udemy. This course is absolutely free. You can go there and enroll even today and learn JSON. It's very simple to work with. Regardless, this JSON has a property called value, and that value is an array. Arrays are specified by square brackets in JSON, and it has nothing in it. So we're good with this. So we know when the get item returns one value, it means it's going to be the actual ID of that item. But if it doesn't return anything, it means that our ID should be the ID of miscellaneous item, which is 5. Fantastic. So let me click on edit again. And when I come back here, I want to add another action, and I want to call it initialize variable. Under initialize variable, I want to call this variable category ID. the type is going to be integer, and the value that I want to enter is going to be 5. Again, this is the 5 that I got from here, miscellaneous. So if the get item returns something, I reassign the value to the category ID. If it doesn't return anything, I don't touch it, and it will continue working. Perfect. Now, if I go to get items, this one returns a value. That value is an array, and we know that that array has either nothing in it or one item in it. Great. So when we have this information, let's check if it has returned anything. So if I click on new step, I can add a condition here. And if I select the condition, for the choose value, I can get the count of the items in the get items. So let's do it here. If I go under expressions, I can say len, which is actually a function that accepts an array and returns the number of items in it, which is exactly what we need from get items. So if I click on dynamic content and I check the value that it returns, remember the value was an array with a square bracket, this one returns me the number of the items that it returns. So if I'm using len, the value, which is the array, I want to see how many items it has. And this is going to be an integer. So I click on OK. I'm happy with it. Is equal to 1. As we discussed, it either returns 0 or 1. So if it returns 1, it means that, hey, this get item actually found a category related to the category that the user entered. So if this is the situation, I want to get that value and insert it here. Let me get that value here. And I say set variable. And this time, I want to pick the value of the category ID because now we actually have a valid category ID. And this value, we should get it from the get items, right? Where do we get it from? If I use the get item and I use the ID directly, because by nature, this is an array, it puts a for each loop here. I don't like it. So what I do, I actually go to the expression and I say, whatever the value that you get from there, convert it to integer. And the value that we want, if I go to the dynamic content, get item has the value. Do you remember that was an array? I want the first item in the array, and of that item, I need the ID. So let me, I know this one can make you a little bit nervous. I keep this in my notepad, and when we run it, I will show you where I got this ID. Regardless, I have a Udemy course, which is called Master Microsoft Flow Expressions in 2 hours. So in that course, I'm covering working with all these expressions down to the last details, from ground zero to very complex expressions. If you're interested, regardless, I will put the link in the description, but let's get back to where we were. I will explain this in the end when I'm running it after test, so just keep it here. So this expression is going to convert whatever we get here as the value, which is an array. We get the element 0 of that array, and for element 0, we get the ID property, and whatever it is, we cast it to integer because we want to put it in an integer variable. So I click OK, and we are happy. Next step, we need to insert a value inside this PRD01, and this time everything has to come from the trigger that we created on the top, except for the category ID, which if we don't find it it should put 5. But if we find something there in the categories table, we should get the ID from the category ID using this expression and assign it there. Perfect. So new step, SharePoint. And under SharePoint, I'm looking for create item. So I select the create item, and this time again, I'm using the same connection to SharePoint. But instead of category, this time I'm using PRD01. Exactly the same thing. Title, this time I have a value. So if I go to the trigger that I have, which is manually trigger flow, the title is going to be product name. I put it here. The category ID. Now, instead of picking up the value from here, I select enter custom value. And now I can actually pick the variable, which is category ID. And the unit price, again, it's coming from my manually trigger flow, which is the unit price. So far, so good. Let's save and test it. So I click on save again. Sometimes it doesn't. OK, let's test it and see what we get out of it. So product name is going to be final test product. Category is going to be books. And unit price is going to be 150. Run flow, done. Let's see if it is done. Come back here. And final test products, books, $150. Great. Now, remember, I wanted to show you something which is here. The reason that I kept it here to explain it to you is here. When I use the get item, see the value that we get. This value is actually the same value that we get here. It is an array, so this array can have multiple elements, but this array has only one element, although it's not a small one. So it's like a full-featured package of properties. Among these properties, so basically when we use 0 here, which means the first element of this array. Now, this first element of this array has a property called ID. So when I say .id, I'm actually referring to this one. Again, working with these expressions is not something that you can learn it through examples. It's a little bit more complicated than just Google it and find the right expression. Again, the course is there. Take a look into that, and I hope you will enjoy it. Fine. So let's try something else. I go back to the top of the page, save another test, and this time I say the product name is going to be dummy test. And this dummy test, I want to put it under the category of sports, just to make sure we don't have sports here. And we don't have it. Great. So unit price is going to be 1,400, and I click on Run Flow. Done. And this time, if I come here under PRD01, dummy test goes under miscellaneous. And again, if we check this, if we go through the condition is false, so set variable did not work. And create item actually uses the category ID, dummy test, and the unit price, and this category ID is the ID of the miscellaneous items. And that was all about it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Like is more important than anything else for me these days because I really want to promote the channels. And based on your support, I will have more and more time to work on the videos and produce more and better content for you. Stay tuned, and next video is coming soon, hopefully. Have a nice day.